Hello, everyone. How are y'all? Can everybody hear me okay on Zoom? Okay, 2 thumbs up. Great. All right, this is what I'm going to do today with Zoom people. Because the way I share my screen, it kind of throws y'all away. And so I can't see if people are raising their hands or something like that. And so if you need to say something or ask something in class, unmute yourself and just holler out, okay? Does that sound good? All right. So you can mute and unmute yourself as needed, but just go ahead and keep it on mute if you're not, just in case somebody comes yelling down the hallway. All right. Let me get everything.
It was on Zoom. Did you get my chat on Monday?
No, I did not. And so that was the problem, is when I share my screen on Zoom and I'm doing Zoom and all this, it kicks the participants to where I can't see things. And so I'm going to try to do it a different way, that if y'all do need to like say something, you can like unmute yourself and just talk in class. And
it was just, you were in the middle of taking a roll and my Wi-Fi went out.
And Zoom was also having,
oh my God, I'm not gonna get cut.
Yeah, and Zoom was also having problems on Monday too. And so I didn't get the recording done correctly. There was actually like nationwide panic because Zoom was not working during like our class time for some people. So anyways, I'm going to check my output too, because I want to not connect.
I got right back in.
Okay, if for some reason, if you do check your attendance and I marked you absent on Monday and you were there, email me and I'll change it.
I couldn't get on it first, but then
Yeah.
I got in.
Just shoot me an email and I'll just trust you on this one, because there was just issues, and we'll roll with it. All right, so I'm gonna get things pulled up for today. Y'all are 310. All right, let me turn on this thing. And let me get roll going. Of course, I just clicked out of it because I'm a genius. All right, so the Zoom people at home, I have Garrett, Austin, Zach, are you there? Zach, there you are.
I'm here. Yes, ma'am.
Jamaica, I see you. Michael, you're there. Kaylee, you're there. Kylie, are you there? Gracie, AJ, I don't see Kylie yet. Ashley. Oh, I'm already on to the next. Okay, so Ashley, you just added? Okay. So I'll catch you up on things. Usually you're going to be in group A, which is going to meet on Mondays, and then group B is going to meet on Wednesdays, and then we're online on Fridays with usually an assignment to do. Not like it's going to be asynchronous on Friday, to where I might have something posted for you to watch. I might have something posted for you to do. Okay, but for today, I thought it would be good if you just came. All right, so Ashley, Isaiah, there you are. Adrian. Do we have Adrian here? Okay. Harley, Taylor, Thomas, Faith, Griffin, Marguerite, right there, and Fancy, I don't see her. Mary, there you are. Michael. All righty. Okay, got that fun part done. All right, I'm going to share my screen with people at home, and everything should be good here. So on Monday, we went over the introduction to AP Style and what that, kind of the top 15 things to make sure you know. And so your assignment on Friday asks you to take your first step into trying to edit AP Style. And so if you go into the syllabus right here, which just a reminder, if you go to Blackboard and go to course schedule, it's embedded here, but you can click to the live link right here, which allows you to click on all your resources that you need more easily there. The worksheet that you are going to complete for Friday is here, Unit 2. When you click on it, you can save it and then do it digitally. You can save it, print it, and write on it, take a picture, and then scan it up to show before me. Those are two ways that are just fine. But you're going to use the AP Style book and go through these 45 sentences, and you're going to determine if it's correct or if there's something wrong in it. And this is supposed to give you a headache, all right? So be prepared. It's not supposed to be, you might think, oh, this is so easy and everything's correct. And then you're gonna get in class and be like, there's everything that's wrong on here. Or you might mark things wrong that are actually right. It's just teaching you how to use your AP Style book and to second guess things that might be grammatically correct, but it's not AP Style. Does everybody understand that? All right, it could be fun if you like learning little weird nuances about different styles. So make sure that you have this uploaded by the end of the night Friday. I think it's due at like 11:55. And then on Monday, we'll go over the answers and start checking ourselves on that. All right, so today we're gonna go over a little bit more grammar review for this type of writing. And then I'm gonna introduce you to an online education website for journalism called NewsU. And if you read in the syllabus, by the end of the semester, you're to submit that you have done 2 of their free online courses, which take about an hour each to do. So you have the whole semester to pick 2 that interest you and do those, but I'll show you those later. So I'm gonna go on into grammar for media writing. And this is on top of AP Style. So AP Style, of course, are the little nuances that tell you how to write times and dates and how you spell countries, how you abbreviate countries, and all that fun stuff. Actually, I'm going to exit out of that and just share it like this so I can keep my people on the side right here. It's another frustrating thing about working off of one screen. So grammar for media writing. This is of course linked online so you can go back. The value of good grammar. Impeccable grammar, clean copy along with understanding and adherence to AP Style will make you very valuable if you go into the workforce. Whether you're going into the workforce in a communications role or in the workforce as somebody in finance, knowing these things makes you marketable. So there are always going to be exceptions to the rules when you have grammar rules or AP Style rules. But as a general rule, for all these following slides, just don't do these things. Sorry, I think I misquoted myself there. That was the rules to not break. So has anybody ever heard of a book called, a book by William Strunk called The Elements of Style? Have you ever heard of that? Okay, good. I'll teach you new things. The Element of Style is a book that was written in 1919 by a professor of Cornell University named William Strunk. And it's kind of used today, even 100 years later, as the Bible for writing style guides. It's not necessarily an AP style, but it's kind of the what not to do when you are writing professionally. William Strunk was a teacher of a soon-to-be famous author named E.B. White. Anybody recognize that name? Anybody read Charlotte Webb's when you're little? So E.B. White was a student of Strunk, and in the 50s, he edited the book, and then he put out another edition, which is still widely used today in a lot of colleges. I was required to buy it and read it. I'm not going to make y'all do that. I'm just going to go over the highlights of it today. So when you are writing for the media, the most important thing is to write succinctly. Aim for tight, short sentences that do say everything you need, but don't have needless words in them. When Professor Strunk would get up in front of his class, he was known for jumping up on tables and shouting up and down, "Omit needless words," because he would get so frustrated with his students trying to fill word counts by flowery language that wasn't needed for the content that was there. And so if a sentence, if you have extra words in the sentence that's not needed, take them out. If you can say things in a shorter way, rewrite it. So aim for tight sentences, especially in journalism. Word count really matters. You might think, oh, a 700-word article, that's short and easy. I'll just blurb my way through it. It's actually harder because you have to say everything you might say in 2,000 words in 700 words. If a sentence can be made in two, make it two sentences. A lot of conjunctions used in sentences aren't necessarily the way to write journalistically. So short sentences that are omitting needless words. Make sure a sentence is actually a sentence though. Everybody here should know a sentence needs a subject and a verb. It does not need a verb that is try to avoid using passive verbs when you are writing. There are rare exceptions for this. He called out, period, no reply. No reply is not necessarily a sentence, but that would be accepted in some cases. But in general rule, just don't do it. Try to mix up sentence length and structure when you are writing journalistically. Don't start every sentence with a clause. I see this in a lot of beginning journalistic writers. They like to start everything off with a dependent clause. Try to avoid that. If you write like that, go back and edit. A lot of times you just have to write to get the stuff out of your mind or to get something on paper. And that's when editing becomes so important in journalistic writing, because then you get your thoughts out there and then you go back and formulate them for journalistic style. Don't have every sentence be short or long, mix it up. And use active voice as much as possible. There are times when passive voice does play into account. However, when possible, only use active voice in writing. And the reminders about what active and passive voice is. Passive voice is the verb to be plus an action verb. He is running rather than he runs. Okay. He is going to the store versus he goes to the store. You always want to take the more active and leave out that is going and just use go when writing. Be concise. So here's Professor Strunk jumping up and down on the table. Omit needless words. Vigorous writing is concise, he says. Quoted from his book, a sentence should contain no unnecessary words. A paragraph, no unnecessary sentences. and for the same reason that a drawing should have no unnecessary lines and a machine no unnecessary parts. So he's very adamant that as writers, we should refine what we're saying and get to the point. Don't be my mama, a Southern woman telling a story that goes off on 15 tangents to get to the end. I love her, but she's just one to take 10 minutes to tell a 2-minute story. I probably do it too. Be concise. Elements of Style also says, as a rule, it's better to express a negative in a positive form. And so say not honest rather than dishonest. He did not remember rather than forgot. He did not pay attention to rather than ignored. So you're using the positive verb there, but then accompanying it with a negative to show it. In journalism, we are about saying it as tightly and in as few words as possible, but use the shorter way to say it more than not. Shorter is stronger. Always ask yourself, can I say this in fewer words or characters? If the answer is yes, do it. Almost always you will find the shorter way is stronger when you are writing. Agreement, make sure your verb agrees to the subject and refers to your subject. This is something a lot of people easily make mistakes in. Each and none need a singular verb. Would you say each are or each is? Each are going or each is going? Is each singular or plural? He is going, he are going. Treat each as the word he or her or she. So it would be each is going. A group, a family, and a team are singular as well. So the group is going rather than the group are going. This is actually different than British English. If anybody has ever studied British English, they pluralize groups. So they would say the football team are winning the season, which when you first hear it, you're like, that doesn't sound necessarily right, because we say we singulize groups. The team is winning the season. Pluralizing incorrectly is far more common. Agreement, make sure your pronoun refers to your subject. The freshmen were talking about the books they had read. They were bored. As written, they refers to the books. As a general rule, try to limit the use of pronouns, it and they, because it confuses what you're talking about sometimes. Make sure your participle phrases refer correctly to your subject. Walking down the road, he saw a woman accompanied by 2 children. Here, walking refers to him, so the person walking, but if you kind of read it a different way, it could also refer to the woman and her children. He saw a woman walking down the road accompanied by her 2 children. So you have to make sure that you're putting your descriptor in the right place here so we know what you're talking about. Clauses with commas before and in the middle of sentences. Commas are hard in writing, and it's a lot of times it takes practice to know when and how to use commas. People like to throw them in there all the time or leave them out because you just don't know where to put them. Common words that start clauses: if, when, where, because, due to, since, whenever, wherever, in, as, although, for, and while. So a lot of times, if it starts with that, it's going to need a comma before the rest of the sentence starts. Often the sentence can be rewritten though, so the clause comes at the end. This is the preferred way to do it. So instead, when it rains, comma, people bring out their umbrellas. The more preferred way would be people bring out their umbrellas when it rains. Like I said earlier, you want to try to avoid using dependent clauses all the time when you're starting your sentences. You want to separate independent clauses using commas and conjunctions, but better yet, go ahead and make them 2 sentences. Like I said earlier on, if you can make it 2 sentences, is probably the better choice when writing. The candidate stopped in 18 cities and he made speeches in each one. Nothing wrong about that sentence, but journalistically speaking, you would want to say the candidate stopped in 18 cities, period. He made speeches in each one, period. Just cut those sentences down. It might seem choppy at first to you, but as you get going, it does better. And try your best not to use dependent clauses in compound sentences. Restrictive relative clauses are not set off by commas. The girl who was injured in the crash later died. A lot of people would put commas where in the sentence? After the word girl and then after injured. That doesn't need a comma to be set off, okay? Parentheses, in general, try to avoid them in writing. Just don't use them unless you are absolutely sure that you need one in the sentence. A lot of people like to just do this because that's kind of how we write to our friends, or sometimes even how you like text. You'll put things in different punctuation that we're just kind of used to more as a society. But in general, don't use parentheses in journalistic writing. Hard news does not contain asides, and asides are what parentheses are supposed to be. There are exceptions to this with AP style. If you are using a proper noun that can be, that is usually an acronym. So let me think of one. So I work a lot with the Ronald McDonald House of Charlotte, and the Ronald McDonald House acronym is RMH. I could technically start off an article and say the Ronald McDonald House of Charlotte, and then beside that in parentheses put RMH parentheses, and then for the rest of my article I don't have to write out the Ronald McDonald House of Charlotte every time I mention them. I put RMH for the rest of it, but I've told you I'm doing that in my first mention. So that is a time in journalistic writing that you use parentheses for AP style purposes. All right, any questions about that? Okay. Punctuation, commas go before conjunctions, but not in a list. We talked about the you don't use an Oxford comma, and you make sure you don't use it in a list, but you do in compound sentences. But when in doubt, try not to use compound sentences. Punctuation are always inside of quotation marks. We kind of went over that with our AP style yesterday. And then I put this slide on this again just to reiterate. Avoid semicolons, avoid overuse of colons, and don't use exclamation points. All right? Everybody got that? So we're not going to use a lot of parentheses in this class. We're not going to use semicolons unless we absolutely know what we're doing with it. We're not going to use a lot of colons unless we absolutely know what we're doing with it. And we're just not going to use exclamation points. Okay? Got that at home? No exclamation points? Exclamation point. Paragraphs. Journalism paragraphs are a little bit different than, say, you're writing an essay in English class. You're going to look at the entire story following the following paragraph format. Your topic sentence or your lead sentence, which we'll go into how to write those next week, will be a paragraph in itself. Then you'll have your supporting sentences will be paragraphs in themselves. And then your final sentence or concluding sentence can be a paragraph in itself. You have shorter paragraphs in writing. You don't necessarily have to have one sentence paragraphs, but you don't need 5 sentences to make a paragraph in journalistic writing. A lot of hard news stories may or may not have traditional conclusions. We use something called the inverted pyramid. Has anybody ever used that before in writing? And we'll go over that next week. And that's the style that you use when you're writing for traditional journalistic stories, where you hit the very top of the pyramid, it's inverted. And so the heavy content is up here, and then it kind of dwindles down to follow-up content at the bottom. However, feature stories should have conclusions, more like a English paper, I guess. Paragraphs, you want to have one main idea per paragraph. They should be no more than 4 sentences. Like I said, they're shorter. That doesn't mean they need to be 1 sentence each, but they need to be shorter. 1 sentence paragraphs are fine as long as it makes sense for the article. Like I said, not every paragraph should be a single sentence. When you're writing a journalistic article, you want to avoid using present tense. A lot of times you write in past tense because you're covering events or things that have happened, okay? Make sure your tense is consistent throughout the story. You can also use future if you're talking about something that is going to happen as well. And like I said, elements of style is something that is great to use. I actually have found it online as a PDF. And so if you're interested in reading, it's a pretty short book. I have it linked here for you. But he goes over and he has, let's see, 21 different chapters that are like a page each. And it goes over little nuances that just helps make your writing better. I don't want you to graduate college, never have seen this book before, because it's one that, especially in this field, you at least need to know of, because people will refer to Strunk's book or the elements of style, and you now know what that means. So feel free to click on this, read through it in your free time. All right, a few more little things, and then we'll be done with my grammar and AP style main lectures. I know these aren't the most interesting, unless you're a grammar nerd, which I can sometimes be. Additional things to know: learn to use irony, the ironic. Don't use it unless you know what you're doing. Don't use humor unless you really refined it. Especially with news stories, you need to just kind of be boring in a way. Don't exaggerate. But what I mean by boring is not just like, you know, reading Dage, but reading the facts, the hard facts, telling the story in the best way you can without using figures of speech a lot of the times, without using a lot of colorful language, humor, and irony. You want to get the news out there with the least bias as you can, and sometimes those things lead to bias. Know the difference between critical information, crucial information, and vital information, and that will help you order your stories. The vital information is going to be the very first thing you talk about. The crucial is going to be the next, and then the critical is going to follow that. Who, whom, and that, know the difference between those, okay? You can look those up in AP Style, you can look those up in Strunk's book, but make sure you're using those correctly. We talked about this yesterday, the US, if you are referring to the United States, if it is US with abbreviation, if it's an adjective, if you're using it as a noun, you use the United States. Limit your use of adverbs like very, and just try to avoid using those as much as you can. Like I said yesterday, use one space after a period. Do not end sentences with prepositions. I know this is a grammar rule that may have changed since I was in elementary school. You used to be taught absolutely don't use a preposition at the end of a sentence. Now people are a little bit more lenient about it, but try your best not to do that. It is okay to begin sentences with and or but don't do this a lot. It does have a place and time. Know the difference between words that are verbs and nouns, depending on if they're one word or 2 words. This is a common mistake. Shut out is something different than a shutout. What do I mean if it's shut out, 2 words? What happens there? Got shut out of the room, right. And then a shutout is what? It would be a person who was maybe shut out of their family. That person is known as a shutout. So a lot of times, 2 words are verb, used as a verb, you are shut out. 1 word would be a noun. Don't split verbs. She opted to just go. This is something common that I see people do a lot, where they split words. To go is the verb, but they've put that just in between it. The better writer would, if they really wanted to use that word just, they would put it before. She opted just to go to the bank, or to go just to the bank afterwards. So, and then limit the use of contractions when writing. Using contractions is not incorrect when writing news articles, but just try to limit your use of them. Also, know the difference between these things. Hopefully you do, but just a nice little reminder. It's there, your, affect, effect, things that you just need to be cognizant of as you're doing. All right, so there's your second grammar lesson. Hopefully I didn't lose you all in that. These are just little things that it's good to just be refreshed and be told about, so you don't, you at least have those in your mind as you're writing. All right, so I'm gonna move on, kind of switching gears now, and introduce you to something that is called News U. And so the link is here, and it's gonna take you to something called the Pointer Institute. And if you look down in your syllabus, scrolled right past it. Right here, on your major assignments, you have News U courses 2. And if you look here, on December 2nd, you have to submit screenshots of your completion of 2 of these courses. And so what you need to do this is to create an account with Pointer News University. So you can log in and register here. And I'm not a robot. Remember me? Let's see if it remembers me. Please confirm I'm not a robot. I already did that. All right, so News University is a sometimes paid for, sometimes free, sometimes sponsored self-learning for the journalist industry. And so what you are able to do is find courses that interest you. And sometimes if you're working in a profession, they may say you need a refresher in this, and so you can go find a course on this and watch that. The journalism profession is changing so much, and so a lot of times people who aren't used to a new technology need a way to learn that. They have courses on here, and so in a way this is teaching you how to use this resource, but then also it'll give you ways to learn that as well. So there's 100+ interactive courses, and getting started is easy. I'm gonna click on that. So course types, you want to do any of these, self-directed or webinar. And you also want to, so I'll click on enroll in a course. And they just changed their search. They have a new website now, it looks different. So here's the free. You want to register here. And it should give you, I'm going to find where this link is. Full course catalog. So down here are all the courses that you can take, and then you can search for the free ones by going right here and pushing this little free button. And this gives you tons of courses that you can take. So here's an interesting one. Newsroom ethics in the coronavirus era. That's pretty interesting. I might want to go take that just to see what people are saying about right now. The role of gels in the fight of coronavirus. So a lot of these are going to be very up-to-date things that people are going to want to know about right now. There's also writing ones that will help you with your writing. If you're interested in photography, there's ones on photography, journalism and trauma, news sense, the building block of news, hooked on junk news, journalism fundamentals, craft and values. And so what you're going to need to do, I'm going to go into the fact check it one. Click into that. You're going to add it to your cart. It might say that it used to be $29. A lot of these were paid for, and then after a while they become free. Or sometimes people give scholarships, and certain organizations make them free for people to use. So check it out. And then you shouldn't have to fill all that out, but we'll see if that lets me do this. Start course. And here we go. So it gives me an instructor. It gives me steps to take this course. And then at the very end, you should get some type of certificate saying that you finished it. You just need to screenshot that for course proof. All right. So any questions about NewsU? You find 2 throughout the semester that interest you. If you want to wait till December 1st to do both of those, feel free. If you want to do them early, feel free, but they're not due until that date. All right. Any questions? Sound good at home? All right. I like your new background. There you go. So, all right, one more thing we're going to do today is kind of get into our first writing unit, and that is going to be news writing, writing for news media. And so to do this, we want to talk about what is newsworthy. There's a lot of discussion, and I've read through some of your posts that were due this week, and a lot of you have some good ideas. You have a good understanding of what the news media are dealing with today, some of the struggles, some of the obstacles that are in the way, some of the challenges, and the idea of understanding newsworthiness. We kind of went into a little bit of last week, but what makes something newsworthy? And we're going to go over a few things that you can ask yourself as you're writing for this class. I'm going to ask you to pick your own topics for the articles that you're going to be doing. And so for the first thing, you're going to be writing 2 hard news articles. And a lot of times I assign students clubs to write for and sports teams to write for, but we're in a little bit of a different era right now, because there's not, the same things that are always going on a college campus are in a different format right now. So we may have to be a little bit more creative with what we write about for these stories. And so we'll kind of go over some ideas for that. But right now I just want to go into a brief discussion about what newsworthiness is. And as I'm doing this, start thinking about some topics that you might be able to cover without having personal conflicts with it. So, I mean, if you're the president of student government, you probably don't want to write an article about student government, right? Because there's that conflict of interest. If you are the captain of the baseball team, you probably don't want to do an article on the baseball team. So newsworthiness, determining the idea for a story can sometimes be very challenging. If you're out in a field and you're actually a journalist working for an online newspaper or a TV station or a radio station, any of those circumstances, a lot of times you'll be assigned stories, but a lot of times you have to come up with your own stories. And so you're following things, your own Twitter, your own other news sources, you're following police reports, you're getting ideas for things of your own investigation techniques. And so you have to keep in mind, though, that you have to learn to find ideas for stories that would interest the vast majority of the public. A lot of things that we might personally think are really cool, the vast majority might not. And so you have to make sure that if you're choosing a topic, it fits the newsworthiness for the general public or specific for your organization. If you're working for a technology magazine, you of course are going to be looking for things that interest those who are really into technology. In this course, you can kind of do that as well. In order to decide something is newsworthy, you need to determine what news determinants are. So prominence, importance, proximity. What's proximity mean? How close it is to something. So is it local? Can you localize a national story to something that is, unless you're a national news organization, you usually want to find some way to localize a story to fit your community. And so a person writing for, say, the Gardner-Webb online newspaper wouldn't do a story about the hurricanes that are affecting Texas right now because we aren't living in Texas. However, to localize that story, we might do a story on how students here are making care packages to send to people who might have some damage done, or might maybe cover a group who goes down to rebuild things for the hurricane. Yes, ma'am.
If we're part of a group, like the Release the Captives group, I'm in it, but like I'm not a, I don't know how to explain. I'm just like a regular student in it. Could we do something on that?
I'm usually okay with that. Yeah, I'm usually okay with that, especially because it's a learning, because we're in a learning. If you were maybe a journalist working for a newspaper, I wouldn't let you cover that if you were in it. But a lot of times, if you're not like the president or founder of something and you're just a part of something, I'm okay with that for an educational purpose. But know that that's not necessarily common if you were working in a professional way. So timeliness, you don't want to talk about something that's old news or already been covered, or you don't want to maybe talk about something that's so far in the future that people are going to forget about your story before the event actually happens. So covering events prior to, there's kind of a balance there. Consequence and impact. Does this topic have those two things? And then human interest. Are people just going to be interested in it because it's dealing with people's stories, ideas of, especially when you're doing stories that are more feature stories, human interest is going to get really play a really important role in that. People like stories of hope. People like stories of overcoming obstacles, and those make really good feature stories. So breaking down those things just a little bit. Prominence, well-known people, if it has to do with people that are well-known. We talked about the difference between public and private people already in this class. And so for a few examples, if someone is well-known that does something, it is news. For example, if you're a volunteer at a local children's hospital, it most likely won't make headlines. However, if the Queen of England and the President of the United States and an all-star baseball player does, it makes news. The same holds true for a school's publication. Your principal, the senior class president, the varsity quarterback, if you're talking about a high school, are all prominent members of your school, and you would want to make sure that you would cover them if they were doing things special. Proximity. Events closer to home are more newsworthy than events taking place far away. We kind of went over this already. If events happen in close proximity to your home, it is news. If things are happening with our school, it's news. Timeliness, people want to know what just happened or what's happening now, or if you're covering events that are about to happen, what's going to about to happen next week, next month, something that's closer in proximity. Consequence and impact, stories that have direct impact or effect on your reader have significance and value. If a giant storm is coming, you're going to want to cover that. That's what meteorologists do. If the school has a new policy that now we have to wear masks and gloves, you want to cover that, you know? That's not a thing. Don't worry. But just saying. So consequence and impact, if it's something people need to know because it's going to affect their lives. And then human interest. Talked about 3 types of human interest stories: emotional, stories of conflict, and then the unique, if something's just different than the rest. So these are different types of stories that you need to make sure you can check off those before you pick a topic. Let's see, we have 5 minutes. I might skip through some of these. Examples that you might consider: new school policies, those to deal with proximity, timeliness, consequence. Maybe a professor is retiring after working 35 years. That deals with proximity, consequence, prominence. Women's volleyball goes undefeated, deals with proximity, consequence, timeliness. So see how we're checking these things off as we're picking a topic. And then what is newsworthy? I have 2 videos. I might wait till next week to show those. And let me go. These are just different other examples we could go through. So choosing a topic, I want you to start thinking about this, and by next week you're going to have your first topic for your story, for your first story. And so think about some ideas. I just have a few more that might help us in today's environment. So knowing how to localize national or worldwide stories. What are students here doing to help this? What's the community in Gardner-Webb, Bowling Springs, Shelby, North Carolina doing to help maybe somewhere else? How can you find something that's happening that's national news, but something here is working for it? Think about maybe the protests that are happening. Are student groups forming because of national things that are going on? How are people preparing for the political season locally? You can cover an event. I'm not exactly sure how events are even going on right now. How are clubs meeting? Y'all have to tell me these things because I don't know. Are there virtual meetings going on for student organizations? What do y'all know? Okay. So even covering how events are happening now, kind of as an overall kind of umbrella story, is an interesting story. How are students dealing with the type of environment we have right now, but still trying to have some sense of normalcy? That's a story because that covers prominence, impact, proximity. It covers all of those different types of ideas. New rules, policies, and procedures. What's different this year than last? You could make a huge long list about that. But then how can you maybe turn that into a human interest story to cover something? Look for changes to buildings, new buildings. There's been a lot of construction that went on during the fall or the spring, the summer and the spring. We've used that to kind of update things around campus. Covering that is a new story. Yes, ma'am. No. No. No, you would be fine with that. So I know they did some updates to the pool, right?
They haven't finished yet.
Okay, but that would be a story. That would be a good news story. So, I know they did some updates to dorms. Was anybody here during the summer when the truck ran into the dorm? That was a fun day. Y'all know what I'm talking about? The dorm behind Hardee's. Does everybody know what happened? Spangler? Yeah. So there was a big Mack truck parked at Hardee's, and the brake or something slipped off when the guy was going to get food, and it ran down into the dorm. If you go look, there's a new bricked part.
It's just like right on the corner. It's not a big spot, but like the room that was right there, if I was in it,
yeah. Thankfully, we weren't in school right then. I mean, it was serendipitous. But there were pictures of the inside of the room that were taken that day. I joked around with my my students last semester who were on the photography team, and they were like, we're required to get a current, like a what do you call it, like a not a tragic event, but an emergency event. They were supposed to get one of those. Nothing happened all semester, and then we end up with a truck in a dorm. So that's fun. All right, so 1 minute left. What are athletes doing to prepare for a different year? Taking the quote temperature of the campus with regard to conditions during a college pandemic, talking about emotional stress, looking at research that's being done that people might not be talking about enough. How is stuff like this affecting mental health, emotional health? Those are news stories, things that we can look at. So these are just some ideas to think about as we get started. But next week, I want you to start developing an idea, and we will go into the technicalities of writing a news article, and you will start drafting one. So any questions before we go for today? For Friday, your assignment is to make sure you have your AP style guide and work through worksheet number 2, submit it on Shobi by 11:55 on Friday night. Don't spend your Friday night doing that. But spend your Friday night not doing anything that fun either. Okay? All right. See you guys Monday. All right. Bye at home, people. Have a good weekend.